Cool. I think we'll get started. So hey folks, welcome to the Recruitment Coaching Couch session webinar. So this is the fifth in a series of webinars where we'll be providing you, our audience, over the next few months with employment tips, tools and advice. So I'm Lucy Neal, the marketing manager at Trenovo Group, and Trenovo Group is made up of 3 brands. And these include Trust in Soda, a digital IT recruitment agency, Broadgate Search, a finance and governance recruitment agency, and BioTalent, a life sciences recruitment agency. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is webinar 5, and today we're going to be looking at mental health and wellbeing in times of uncertainty. So the aim of today is to help you achieve a healthier work-life balance. And the main areas for discussion today are tips, advice and guidance on how to support mental health and wellbeing, how to achieve a healthier work-life balance, and new wellness strategies developed during times of uncertainty, and new ways of working and communicating as an approach to the current climate. So a bit of housekeeping before we get started. You will be muted upon entry. But we want to make this as engaging as possible. So if you do have any questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat box, which is just below, or the Q&A section as well. And we'll get through as many of those as possible. So now I'd like to introduce our panel. So if you could each introduce yourself, your role and your experience, and we'll start with you, Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm the client relationship manager for Trenovo Group. And yeah, I mean, I've quite enjoyed having some time in lockdown to just reflect, I think, and take a break and actually focus on my health. So yeah, my experience has been quite positive.
Perfect. And next we'll go to Dr. Ellie Hambley.
Hi, so I'm Dr. Ellie Hambley. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been working with Trenovo Group, even more over lockdown, providing workshops and some one-to-one work as well. And I've got various experience in working with people of all ages and situations. And I've had an interesting experience with lockdown. Various things going on, and trying to take it as an opportunity to look at how I can improve things for myself as well.
Lovely, thank you, Ellie. And we'll go to you, Ollie.
Hi, Oliver. I work for Trust in Soda. I'm based over in Dublin. Principal recruiter, manage a small team over here. How have I found lockdown? I've actually, similar to what Holly said, there's 2 main factors that I've enjoyed in terms of improvement. One being physical health, found time to work on that, improve that, and secondly is definitely financial health. I've definitely been better with my pennies than I was pre-lockdown. With all the stuff I miss, managed to found a way to enjoy it relatively.
Amazing. There's definitely been some perks. And last but not least, Hayley Hawkins.
Hiya, I'm Hayley and I'm the head of people and culture at Trenovo Group. I actually joined just before lockdown. So lockdown's been very interesting for me, getting to know a new role, as well as doing, very similar to Ollie, the health and financial benefits and perks of lockdown for myself. I haven't been here very long, but before this, I was working for a different recruitment company as head of HR and operations.
Beautiful. So we'll dive straight into some questions. Ollie, the first one's for you. So it can be quite difficult to adapt in the current climate. How can having a routine help?
I guess having a routine, the reason you'd have a routine initially is to maybe replicate what you were doing before. So without speaking for everyone, I presume what they would class as routine was a lot more strict pre-COVID than it is now. So the importance of not going cold turkey, I guess, and going too far different to what you would class as norm. But a routine in general links nicely to the title in terms of the word uncertainty. So I'd say the routine benefit of most people is just to eradicate that uncertainty. Sometimes your wellness and your health is closely linked to that uncertainty, not knowing what you're doing on a daily basis, not knowing what you're doing short term, medium, long term. I think naturally the routine is usually the answer for that, to help turn that uncertainty into certainty. They speak about the link to routine and habit. So the good things that you may want to implement into your day, your week, your life, the good habits, they usually need implementing with a little bit of routine. It's very rare that you'll say, right, I'm going to be a yoga instructor without having to do a bit of yoga and implement it into your routine over a period of time. So I think it's that change from uncertainty to certainty, that adapting good habits. I would say caveat to it all, though, a little bit, is that you don't want, in my opinion anyway, you don't want your routine to control you. You want to make sure you are in control of your routine, and you're not thinking, bugger, I need to be doing this right now, because then that sometimes has a 360 adverse effect on your wellness. So yeah, anything to improve good habits, anything to increase the level of certainty. I think routine is always good.
Amazing. Does anyone else have any input on having a routine and the importance of that?
Something I'd add is, in times of uncertainty, it can feel really overwhelming. And I think, just like Oliver was saying, that you want to try and get a bit of kind of predictability. And in some ways, you can use your routine to focus on what you can control in what feels like a really uncontrollable situation. But also absolutely backing up what you were saying, in terms of you want that flexibility as well, so that you can kind of do what you feel like in the mood, but also so you have some kind of sense of normality and control in something that can feel like a really difficult situation.
Definitely, I couldn't agree with you more. And moving on to the next question, Ellie, this is for you. So our physical health has a huge impact on the way that we feel. Are there any tips on how to stay healthy in times of uncertainty?
Lots of tips, but I think first of all, acknowledging that in the current crisis, it's really understandable if things kind of change. I think I've spoken to lots of people who went to the gym a lot and then it just hasn't happened. So there's also kind of acknowledging that we are in a difficult time, so to give yourself a little bit of compassion in terms of things have changed. The biggest tip I often give is about trying to find exercise that you enjoy, and that you can do in the current situation as well, and sometimes talk about movement snacks. So instead of thinking about, right, I'm going to do like a full-on gym session in my house and prep for all of that, to think about it in terms of trying to move regularly, whether that's doing kind of some squats while you're putting the kettle on, to try and get some movement and exercise in. And we've been speaking in various chats within Trenovo Group about trying to do exercises at your desk as well, because if you're sat down a lot of the time. And I think the most important thing is to try and make it fun, so that you're more likely to do it, because if you absolutely dread it, you're less likely to do it. And then also following on from what Ollie was saying, that it's really important to try and form those habits. So try and latch any exercise on to things that you do anyway, and also try and find the best time of day to do your exercise. Some people are really good at doing exercise in the morning and love it. Some people couldn't think of anything worse. And the benefits of exercise, I think most people are aware of, but it's really good both physically and for your mental health, and with endorphins, and it kind of releases toxins that build up in your body. So doing things you enjoy, find the time, and also accountability is really important. So try and maybe tell people that you're going to do a class. There are so many free classes at the moment, so make the most of that. And if you tell people you're going to do it, you're much more likely to do it.
Amazing.
On those things you said earlier about those like quirky exercises, no joke, there's 3 things that I've been doing. Someone told me about them, and they just got ingrained into my day now. One of them was like see how many press ups you can do before you get into bed. So that like that mentality of right, I'm going to bed now, and I link that now to right, you need to do press ups before you get into bed. It's almost like coincide. And the other one's really funny. The other one is like when I'm running a bath, is how many like those tricep dip things you can do on the edge of the bath before you start. And then the other thing my girlfriend's dad always used to say is to clean your teeth on one leg. Clean your teeth on one leg for a certain amount of time and swap legs to help with your core. And that is funny because I actually do those 3 things, but that's purely just because we're in lockdown and it seems like it's now part of my routine, if you know what I mean. It's you'd have never caught me doing that 3 months ago, but yeah.
It's amazing how lockdown changes you, but that's a perfect illustration. And similarly to the teeth one, I got told years ago about doing squats while you brush your teeth, and it's amazing if you actually do it how quickly your strength builds up. So yeah, I'm with you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Practical tip for everyone there. Yeah.
Very interesting. So Holly, how important is it to stay connected with friends, family, colleagues in the current climate, would you say?
So important. I would have gone crazy by now if it wasn't for social media. I was actually talking with my mum the other day, and she was saying, I don't know what we would have done back in the day before we had like FaceTime, etc. It would have been an absolute nightmare. But yeah, I actually feel like I'm more connected to my family and friends now than I was before lockdown, because I'm able to connect with everyone in one room, because I'm from Wales originally. So, and I now live in London. So lots of my friends are there. My mum lives in Spain. So we don't all get together that often. And now we are constantly, like we do like family quizzes, which are fun, although they cause a lot of arguments. I've started a book club with all of my friends, and it's like brought together lots of friends that didn't necessarily know each other. And Lucy, you've gotten involved in it as well. And it's just having something different to talk about, because I think that was a struggle for us. It was, okay, we're all doing nothing every day except looking at walls and maybe going for a walk around the same park. What are we going to talk about? But book club or something like book club is actually really good because it gets you talking, and it's something a bit different. But I think also taking time to talk with your colleagues is so important. It's easy to get isolated and busy in your tasks, but taking time to chat with them is also like key. Communication is what's getting us through this. And actually, I think loads of positives have come out of it, like collaboration with people that you wouldn't normally collaborate with, and families are getting together that wouldn't normally be able to get together all the time except for Christmas. So yeah, I think it's so important.
Couldn't agree more. Does anyone else have any input on the importance of connecting? No.
I think I similar to Holly, I think I speak to my family more than I've ever done. Good or bad, I'm not sure. But
moving on, Hayley. So any top tips for supporting remote workers' work-life balance?
Yeah, so this is a big one at the moment, and I think it's really important to, first of all, make sure that people have enough time away from work or away from the laptop. Getting people to schedule their working hours if they have changed, or if they're set working hours. Getting people to make sure they're maybe scheduling in their lunch and having regular breaks, because we're finding that lots and lots of people are just, working straight through. Once they start work first thing in the morning, they're working all the way through their lunch, all the way for any break time, and even late into the night, just because they're getting so engrossed in what they're doing. So I think it's really important that managers are saying, make sure you're taking your lunch, go and do something, go for a walk. And then also it's good to advise people to have a workspace that's different to everywhere else in their home. So, if you're, whatever room you're working in, just make sure that you only work there rather than working in every room in your house, so that when you do switch off and you go to a different room, or you pack the desk away, however you're working, you can distinguish between working hours and kind of your life and your personal hours. And yeah, just, encouraging people to talk to you and having a support package in place in terms of well-being, so that people feel that if they are struggling with work-life balance, they have someone that they can talk to, which I'm sure we'll cover later on in this. But just being open, letting people know that it's okay to take time away from work. I think a lot of people are worried at the moment, they're anxious, people are hearing about lots of redundancies, and they're trying to be present as much as they can for work, but we need people to be healthy and happy too, and work-life balance is really important for that.
Definitely. Does anyone else have any input for work-life balance, workers?
I think just to back up what you're saying, it's so important to have breaks, and actually people are really worried about jobs and security, but you're much more likely to be effective and productive at your job if you have those breaks and you have time away. You'll be able to concentrate better if you have food and sustenance throughout the day, and you also get out if you can and do some exercise and have that change of scene. So not only is it really good for your kind of work-life balance, but also your performance at work will be so much better if you do take that time and prioritise that too.
Those breaks felt so guilty at the start because you're in your own home. So like having a cup of tea at 10:30 and like sitting at your kitchen table, drinking a cup of tea or brewing a cup of tea or whatever. To start with, it felt like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. What am I doing? I'm not. Do you know what I mean? You felt like you were doing something wrong, and then you actually take it back to what you'd usually do in the workplace anyway. You'd go to the kitchen at work and make a cup of tea, or you'd go and chat to a colleague for 5 minutes that wasn't work related. But it was almost getting over that initial guilt of, because you're in your home, you feel like you shouldn't be doing anything that's not work. So it was it took me a while, to be fair, of just being like guilt free of actually sitting on the sofa for 5 minutes and drinking a cup of tea. Do you know what I mean? Like that took a while to do that, but once you get into that habit, and it's really good, like Hayley and Ellie says, to get away from your workspace for a minute and have that break.
Definitely. Thank you, Ollie. So are there any methods for relieving stress in uncertain environments, Ellie?
Lots of different strategies, and again I think it's about working out what works best for you. Everyone's different, have different strategies, but the one that I think is the most effective is trying to really concentrate on your breath and deep breathing. It can sound so simple because we breathe automatically and it's I don't need to concentrate on that, but actually it's such a good tool. When we're really stressed, we tend to breathe more in kind of our upper chest, and if we can really focus on trying to breathe more deeply, we'll get more oxygen, but we're also kind of sending a bit of a trigger to our brain to try and switch off that fight, flight, freeze response, and telling your brain and your body that it's safe, that you can kind of calm down and kind of reduce that adrenaline going around in your body. And that is as simple as it sounds. You just concentrate on breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and try and do that for even 10 seconds can really help, and focusing on your kind of your stomach going in and out as well with your breath. So your stomach needs to be coming out as you breathe in and going in as you breathe out. So that is kind of my top tip, if you take anything away, to try and really concentrate on that. And again, like we were saying earlier, trying to use kind of habits that you use throughout the day already, whether it's making that kind of cup of tea or coffee, or just before you brush your teeth or go into bed, just remind yourself to check in about your breath. And then it's also coming back to your routine, trying to keep that can again help, like we were saying earlier. Limiting your news intake can also be really helpful in this time. Obviously we all want to keep up to date with what we can and can't do and what's going on, but it's being really aware of the impact it has when you're watching the news or listening to the news, and really trying to limit how much access you have to that, and the channels that you use. Some are more kind of dramatic than other channels, shall we say, and again it is kind of prioritising the things that are really beneficial. So social life, exercise, what you're eating is really important as well, and making sure you're having enough sleep. I think caffeine, although it can be brilliant, it can also increase anxiety, so just be aware of that and not have too much. And also sugar can be linked to increasing anxiety, so just being aware of those things really.
Wow, thank you. That's so interesting. I just learned so much.
Was anyone else practicing their breathing as well?
Yeah.
Taking the piss today.
I would say, just adding on to that as well, just touching on news and social media, something that I would advise people to do is like unfollowing negative people on your social media. So the people that, you know, are speaking really negatively about things, or whenever you see their post, it's making you feel upset or having an effect on your mental health, it might be worth kind of muting them or unfollowing them just for your own good. Because people tend to kind of wake up first thing in the morning, look at your phone, and if you're going in your phone and it's full of like news and negativity, it kind of sets that mind frame for the day. So doing that can be useful.
Such a good point. And again, following on from that, trying to make sure that you don't look at those things maybe last thing at night. I know a lot of us do check our phones, just like you say, first thing in the morning and last thing at night. And actually the power of trying to give yourself that buffer can be amazing. I've done it and I've noticed a real improvement in kind of how I feel. So yeah, absolutely agree.
Amazing. And next question. So Ollie, this is one for you. So how can you assist and support with health and wellness of your team? I guess from a furlough or kind of managerial perspective, if you're managing teams, things like that.
I think in my personal experience, managing somebody else's health and well-being, I'll be honest, I do find tough. It's that sometimes that presumption or that not knowing or the uncertainty around it is difficult. So the one thing I have to not force myself to do, but consciously make sure you do it is ask that question, especially in a corporate, sometimes managerial perspective. Sometimes that question of how are you, how are things, naturally doesn't happen as much as it should. So the obvious thing to be doing is asking that question and listening to the answer, and not treating it almost as a conversation filler. It sounds so obvious, but without asking that question, you're never going to know what you need to do. Like Hayley mentioned some suggestions earlier about scheduling, absolutely really good suggestions that you should do for your team. Allow them, almost give them the right and the rite of passage to say you don't work in this time, or make sure you stop here and make sure you don't start till here. Almost doing that scheduling for them is important for their own personal wellness. And then from a furlough perspective, it's really all about engagement. It's new to all of us. I don't think we didn't even know what the word was 4 months ago, but speaking to people who are like not working and coming back to work was something that was so new. And I, to be honest, really lucky internally here that we had some good support, but helping furlough people just with general engagement, talking to them about work, talk to them about things that aren't work related, but just having that constant communication as if they were with you there every day. So they're the main two things I think of. Sometimes you do want to get to a point where you offer suggestions. Like some people may not be so open and upfront about certain things within this topic. So sometimes being forthcoming and offering suggestions to help is sometimes key. Asking someone, how are you? Is everything okay? Do you need anything? Sometimes you're going to get not the true answer, if that makes sense. So sometimes offering suggestions, being a bit forthcoming with it is part of the balance, really. But yeah, I think overriding is just make sure you constantly ask that question and make sure that question is non-work related, and then listen to the answer.
Amazing. I guess it's a big responsibility, I guess, especially during times of uncertainty. So thank you for that, Ollie. Did anyone else have any kind of outlook or views on managing teams in terms of?
I was just going to add to what Ollie said. In terms of letting people schedule their time away from the desk, there's lots of different communication tools that are used now by businesses, and most of them do have like an offline, online type of status or setting. So allowing people to, if they're going off, if they're having a half day, if they're having a break, just allowing them to be offline and making sure that they're not being contacted, making sure that there's a kind of a rule in your team that if people aren't working, leave them to not be working, because even though people are on lunch, or sometimes if people are having annual leave, people say, I know you're on annual leave, but, and then you're contacting them about work and letting people have their break and have their time away from work.
Definitely, it's important to be able to switch off and have some time out. And Ellie, Dr. Ellie, we know that stress and uncertainty can affect your sleeping patterns. Are there any tips on how to improve your sleep?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really nicely kind of follows on from what we've been saying about routine, and also some people have just been working constantly, which then really negatively impacts sleep. And then you've also got stress, which negatively impacts sleep. So some of the things very much following what we've spoken about, trying to keep that routine, trying to make sure that you stick to your working pattern and don't let it kind of overflow, is really important. Trying to make sure that you have exercise, so you're physically as well as maybe kind of mentally tired at the end of the day, can really help get to sleep. Trying to get outside is also really important. Getting that sunlight, especially in the morning, really helps with your circadian rhythm. I can never say that word. Because it's kind of triggering your body to say, okay, it's morning time, you're meant to be awake, and it works really effectively. And then hopefully that will work with your melatonin. So by the end of the day, you've got lots of kind of sleep hormones coming out, so you're more likely to fall asleep. And then again, I'm going to come back to caffeine. I absolutely love my cup of tea and coffee, but I try and have it before midday, because it has kind of a half-life of kind of 6 to 8 hours, so it will still be in your body later on in the evening if you have it in the afternoon, which I know is quite a big thing for us Brits. We like to have our afternoon tea, but if you can try and switch it to a non-caffeinated drink, and again, a bit of a heads up, decaf tea still has caffeine in, bit of a marketing error there, so try and stick to kind of non-caffeinated drinks if you can, and being aware that kind of chocolate, especially dark chocolate, has caffeine, and energy drinks do, so just keeping an eye out for that. And then very much following on. Oh, you lost me.
Lost you, sorry.
Am I back?
You're back.
Excellent. And then kind of following on in terms of routine, trying to make sure that you have at least an hour before bed as kind of wind down. So really try and protect that. Try to avoid any kind of emotive topics. Try avoid looking at the news and your phone and social media and those sorts of things. And try and do something really kind of relaxing. Trying to limit your screen time is also really important, because it triggers kind of awake hormones. So if you can put down your phone and maybe read a book or have a bath or something instead, that can help you fall asleep more easily. There's a lot of research to show how helpful it is to actually leave your mobile phone outside of the bedroom, so your room is literally just for sleep. So yeah, experimenting with that, and I think those are kind of the main things really.
Beautiful. I'm definitely going to try and do a couple of those tips tonight, that's for sure. Moving on to Holly. So what new strategies have you developed in your ways of working and communicating, and what have you learnt so far from that?
I think the key thing that I was really guilty of at the beginning that I've now developed was emailing. I would like email people questions all the time, and then people weren't coming back to me and I was getting really frustrated. But if everybody does that, then it's a bit of a nightmare. But I try to call people as much as I can, and also try to video call people, because of what I'm such a social person. I love to chat, and I live with my boyfriend and he doesn't really talk very much. So any chance I get, I'm like, oh, I'll call them and ask the question so I can speak to a human and I don't go crazy. Also the switching off piece, which we touched upon earlier, but during my lunch now I try to read, because when I was watching telly I was finding that I was struggling to stop the episode and go back to work, and it was just all a bit. I read my book and put a timer on. I feel like I've had a break from a screen, my eyes don't hurt. That's been a really good thing. And also at the end of the day, giving myself like a buffer of like half an hour, but then once I've finished work, going for a run, just changing my clothes, getting into my workout clothes makes me feel like I'm changing zones, going for a run, and then afterwards I have a rule not to touch my laptop. So that's me done for the evening. So it's sort of the same in the morning, really. When I wake up, I change into, I mean, I don't change into work clothes. I still put on like jogging bottoms or whatever because nobody's seeing me. But changing clothes like that, mentally, I'm getting into work zone and out of work zone, and I will not go near the bedroom. Like that's like nobody's allowed in the bedroom because that's chill zone. So the living room is where I'll like do all my work, and then I'll go to the bedroom in the evening when I'm ready to watch telly. So yeah, I think those have been my main ones. Trying to think if there's any others. Oh, and with work, obviously we have that 10 a.m. coffee, which I found great. Like I love that. We have a coffee at 10 a.m. where there's like an open Zoom chat. Everyone can go, and we're not allowed to talk about work for 15 minutes. It kind of forces me to have a break, because other than lunch, I'll just work all day, and having that little break helps as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Holly. So Hayley, how important is it to have a mental health first aider in the workplace, specifically during times of uncertainty?
So I'm a massive advocate of mental health first aid. I think it's just as important as having a kind of physical first aider, which is, you know, a law. You have to have one in offices and in buildings. It's so important for many reasons. So in terms of, for the sake of the employees, it helps identify issues nice and early. If you've got somebody who is trained to kind of pick up on the signs, you can work on early intervention. Obviously, mental health first aiders are not meant to be counsellors. They're not trained psychiatrists. But what they can do is have a chat non-judgmentally, confidentially, and just pick up on things and maybe signpost people to support. And with early intervention, not only is that beneficial for the employee and the person who it's affecting, but it's beneficial for the business, because mental illness is one of the main factors for people going on long-term sick. So if you are working on early intervention and people are getting support at a much earlier stage, they're going to get support before their condition becomes severe and they need long periods of time off of work, which is obviously not ideal for the person that's being affected, and not ideal for the business if they're losing out on a great employee for a period of time and they're not doing so well. Also, having a mental health first aider in the business means that there's a reduction in the stigma around talking about mental health and mental health issues. And I think it's really important to reduce that stigma, because there's so much evidence out there now that, you know, we don't need to go into it. I'm sure everyone knows that mental health is a massive thing, but there's still a massive stigma around it. So if you've got somebody in your business and everyone knows that they're there and it's advertised, then people might just, it will become the norm that, oh, actually we can just talk about how we're feeling. Or, you know, when people call in sick, we don't have an issue with saying, oh, I've got an upset stomach, I'm not coming in today, or I've got the flu, I'm not coming in. People should also be able to say, I'm really not in a good space mentally right now, I might need to take some time.
Amazing, thank you, Hayley. Does anyone else have any kind of input for that?
I think just absolutely to support the importance of early intervention, because it's so much more effective if you can get that support sooner. And I think something that Trenovo have been really good at is identifying those people and providing that support. And not only does it mean that it might prevent people getting kind of those longer term mental health issues, it means they'll be back up and running. And I think also it maybe creates more loyalty within the business as well, because if the business is there to support your employees, they're more likely to then kind of support the business as well. And having that positive culture makes such a massive difference in terms of everyone's experience of working in the business as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Ellie. So Ollie, what have been the main challenges as a manager that you have faced during times of uncertainty?
I think, well, I know the main one is the remote element of it. I think it made me realise, how many decisions I make, or things that I do based on the then and now, like the body language element of it. So not having that constant subconscious analysis going on of how are people feeling, how are they talking, what's their tonality like, what's their body language like, how much time they spend away from the desk, like all those little things that subconsciously you would be assessing somebody's wellness without even thinking about it. You'd know by spending 10 minutes with someone if you felt like they were in good spirits or bad spirits without even consciously doing it. Not having that constant analysis, it has been difficult, and it leads me back to what I said before about making sure you ask the question more than you ever have done before. Holly mentioned it about video calls, the importance of, even if it's a short call or a long meeting, just the importance of having that video call to allow for that body language element of it is so important. So it's not impossible, of course. Like we have the technology to do it, but that definitely was the biggest challenge for me. Is going from seeing somebody every day to not seeing them at all, obviously. So yeah.
Lovely. Moving on to the next one, Hayley. So how can a health and wellbeing program help support an organisation?
So I think that having a health and wellbeing program can be a massive support in so many ways. Ellie touched on something just earlier on after the mental health first aider discussion, and said that, you know, your employees will feel that you care about them more and will be more engaged with the business. So that's one of the biggest benefits. If you care about your employees, they will care about you, and it should be, that relationship should just be there anyway. And if you've got a program in place, your employees are going to be happier and they're going to be healthier. And happier and healthier employees are more productive. They build better relationships with each other, which improves your company culture. And they can manage stress better. So whether that's stress outside of work and at home, lots of people are affected by stress outside of work and bring that into work, or whether that's stress that's happening at work, you know, based on your workload or relationships at work. If you're better at managing stress, you're going to be able to just get on with things a lot easier and not let things tie you down as much. Also, in addition to that, you're going to retain your top talent. If people feel like they work for a caring employer, they're likely to stay with you. Whereas if you're not doing anything to support your employees and their well-being and you don't seem to care about them, of course they're going to go somewhere else. And it's the same with attracting new talent and new people to your business. People are going to be more attracted to an employer that is looking after people and cares about people. So everything it all ties into each other, really. But I think that having a health and wellbeing program and looking after mental health are just so important.
100%. Does anyone else have any kind of input on that?
No, I would say that I was quite new to Trinova when I started, and the things that we've had in this business that I'd not seen before, like the coaching sessions with Ellie, and all the different bits and pieces, it does just make you feel so much more valued. And I think it goes such a long way just to put those tiny little things in, like during the working day as well. We have these like sessions with our doctor, and it's just great. Like, it really makes such a difference.
Couldn't agree more with you there. And then moving on to you, Holly, again. So what strategies have you found that help you with mental health and being whilst working remotely? From an employee's perspective.
Huh?
From an employee's perspective.
I would say definitely the taking the breaks, which I sort of said earlier, that has helped loads. I also, with the running, just in general, just have an objective outside of work helped me a lot. Like, so I started it with Couch to 5K. I don't know if you guys have heard of that app, but it's basically where you can't run 5K, but like within 7 weeks you can run 5K really, really well. And just like, I completed it, and it's just having different objectives outside of work as well as inside of work, just so you have these two separate worlds. Painting, that's another thing that I've gotten into that I've loved. I got a kitten, which has been really great. I mean, just trying to get little positive things, because work can be so stressful and it can feel like your whole world sometimes. And I think it's just as important to make sure that you're creating a safe space for yourself outside of work, that you can mentally step outside of when you can't physically step outside of it. So that's been the main one for me, I'd say. So yeah.
Amazing. And the kitten is most certainly very cute.
That's the strategy. Get a kitten.
I'm obsessed.
So we don't have any questions through. I'm just having a little check now. If anyone does have any questions, please do feel free to input them in the chat box just below, or the Q&A section as well. Other than that, does anyone have anything that they'd like to end with, or have any kind of final suggestions on health and wellbeing whilst working remotely?
I've got a question for Ali. I probably have a cup of tea, dip dark chocolate in a cup of tea every night, and you've now told me those are the two worst things.
I'm sorry.
I now need you to replace my cup of tea and dark chocolate with something that's going to help me sleep, but still give me the satisfaction of a cup of tea and dark chocolate.
Well, first of all, the best thing is to replace something rather than try and cut it out. So you're onto a winner there. Can you try and find a non-caffeinated drink that you enjoy?
What is a what would be the best non-caffeinated hot drinks? Like mint tea and peppermint tea and stuff like that.
Yeah, so kind of a herby tea. Rooibos tea doesn't have any caffeine in. If you want something with milk in, it's quite different to kind of not your regular caffeinated tea, but it might be a good transition. And
then how I need to satisfy my sweet tooth as well. How do I satisfy? How am I satisfying that?
Isn't it? I mean, do you have a problem with sleep?
No, to be honest, no, I don't. To be honest, but I always go to sleep really well. In terms of like, I can get to sleep really well, but I think, like everyone, I think sometimes you struggle to get up when you want to, but no, it's not too bad. So maybe I just stick to the tea and dark chocolate.
Just swap one out. Have
Got
one.
Yeah, okay. I'll alternate.
Apparently you used to have Horlicks, and she used to say that puts you to bed.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe try that. I think I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure that tea will have more caffeine in. So if you can swap that one out, that's probably a good place to start. And I think on sleep, it is so undervalued in our society that if you can try and really prioritize it and make sure you have enough sleep. Is that the kitten in the background, Holly? So cute. Got completely distracted there. But if you're struggling to get up in the morning, it often indicates that you're not getting either enough quantity of sleep, or your quality of sleep isn't that good. And what caffeine does, even if you can fall asleep quite easily, it can impact the quality. So it might be worth trying to kind of gradually wean yourself off the caffeinated drinks and chocolate. I'm going to go and do some research to look at whether there are certain chocolate bars that have less caffeine. But maybe trying to swap it for fruit, or even dried fruit, because it has that sweetness. That could be quite a good strategy. And especially at the moment, you can get some really nice tasting fruit because we're in summer. And yeah, maybe trying to get to bed earlier so that you feel more awake in the morning. That might help. Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, do.
Amazing, thank you. Anybody else before we finish this evening?
One thing we haven't mentioned, which was a big factor for me, was alcohol as well. Like subconsciously, I was just not drinking alcohol, and then consciously, I was thinking, really, I'm not drinking. And then I think it went 9 weeks, and I didn't have any, and that was very unlike me, like generally in terms of having drinks at the weekend and whatnot. I've never been a drinker in the week, but the weekend you always find an excuse. I felt a lot better physically just from that 9 week period of not having any alcohol. and it's probably the longest I've ever gone since I was 18. It's just one of those things. Do you know what I mean? Like not in like a drink every night kind of way, but you always find an excuse or a social event. So that period of not drinking was I think was a good element for me in terms of my physical health, definitely. Anyway.
That's a really good point. I actually thought about that earlier and then forgot to mention it. So thank you, Ollie. Because again, that has so many impacts your sleep negatively if you drink alcohol, and your physical health, and also your emotional well-being as well. It's a depressant, alcohol, so it can bring your mood down. And I know a lot of people are drinking more in lockdown. I think there are other people like yourself who've gone the other way, because people can kind of associate having a drink with switching off from work. So it is being kind of conscious of all the other ways that we've spoken about today, kind of switching off work that maybe don't necessarily include alcohol, because it does have so many positive impacts, like you say, trying to either reduce it or cut it out. So thank you for mentioning that.
Lovely. So I think that's about it from us, folks. So thank you so much for sharing your evening with us, or morning or afternoon, depending on what time you do this. We will be uploading this to YouTube, to our Trenovo Group YouTube channel, where you can also view all of our previous webinars, and there's a few other resources on there as well. Other than that, we hope you all stay safe, and we'll see you all soon. All right, thank you.
Bye. Thea says bye. Say bye, Thea.
Oh.